Welcome to True Freedom, where we dive deep into philosophy, self-mastery, and the pursuit of meaning. In this thought-provoking exploration, we unravel Friedrich Nietzsche's profound insights on nihilism, a concept that challenges the very essence of human existence. Nietzsche's warning about the collapse of traditional values and the rise of meaninglessness resonates more than ever in today's world. Through this video, we'll uncover how Stoicism can serve as a guiding light amidst the chaos, offering tools to affirm life and build resilience. Whether you're here for philosophical enlightenment or practical wisdom, this journey will empower you to confront nihilism and embrace your potential for greatness. Let's embark on this transformative path together. The historical context of nihilism. Nietzsche's vision of catastrophe. Friedrich Nietzsche's groundbreaking diagnosis of nihilism paints a vivid picture of Western culture teetering on the brink of collapse. He famously declared, "What I relate is the history of the next 2 centuries. I describe what is coming, what can no longer come differently, the advent of nihilism." For Nietzsche, European culture had been hurtling toward catastrophe with an escalating tension that grew decade by decade. This trajectory resembled a river rushing headlong toward its end, restless, violent, and unreflected. At the heart of this phenomenon lies existential nihilism, which asserts that life lacks intrinsic meaning or value. All humans inherently engage in valuing. Nietzsche argued that merely valuing something isn't enough to escape nihilism. The crux of the issue lies in what one chooses to value. Nihilism emerges when individuals fail to find significance in the higher aspects of life and the world, leaving existence hollow and devoid of purpose. For Nietzsche, nihilism represents the radical repudiation of value, meaning, and desirability. This crisis becomes explicit in his posthumously published work, The Will to Power. However, it's crucial to approach these notebooks cautiously, as they were not ideas he chose to publish during his lifetime. Throughout his writings, Nietzsche identified various manifestations of nihilism, including despair, disorientation, and the absence of higher values. These forms provide a framework for understanding the pervasive sense of meaninglessness that haunts modern humanity. Forms of nihilism: despair, disorientation, and lack of higher values. 1. Nihilism as despair. Schopenhauer and Buddhism. Nietzsche associated nihilism as despair with the philosophies of Arthur Schopenhauer and Buddhism. Both perspectives maintain strong value commitments but view suffering as overwhelmingly negative. According to Schopenhauerian nihilism, existence is dominated by pain and boredom, offering only fleeting moments of relief. Life, therefore, is fundamentally flawed, and it would have been better never to have come into being. Similarly, Buddhism condemns worldly existence, advocating detachment from the endless cycle of mundane drifting. However, Nietzsche rejected this rejection of life. Instead, he urged humanity to remain faithful to the earth, embracing the struggles and joys of earthly existence. By contrast, those who succumb to despair see no redeeming qualities in life, perpetuating a nihilistic outlook that undermines human potential. 2. Nihilism as disorientation. Christianity and the death of God. Christianity, while offering solace through the promise of heavenly redemption, embodies nihilism as disorientation. Nietzsche's famous parable of the madman captures this disorienting void. God is dead. God remains dead. And we have killed him. This proclamation reflects the collapse of religious frameworks that once provided meaning and purpose. The Enlightenment's scientific rationality dismantled belief in an afterlife, revealing humanity's insignificance in the vast cosmos. Without divine guidance or eternal rewards, individuals face a crisis of meaning. Christianity's self-destructive morality, rooted in truthfulness, ultimately undermined its own doctrines, leaving adherents stranded in a world stripped of ultimate significance. 3. Nihilism as lack of higher values. The last man. Finally, Nietzsche introduced the concept of the last man, representing mediocrity and conformity. These individuals are content with lowly comforts, prioritizing entertainment over excellence. They declare, "We have invented happiness," yet their satisfaction stems from diminished aspirations. The last man epitomizes the failure to appreciate and pursue higher values, embodying the worst form of nihilism. By focusing solely on trivial pleasures, the last man abandons the quest for greatness, creativity, and beauty. Nietzsche challenges us to reject this shallow existence and strive for a life-affirming perspective that embraces struggle and achievement. Overcoming nihilism, active versus the passive nihilism. In The Will to Power, Nietzsche distinguishes between two types of nihilism, active and passive. Passive nihilism aligns with the ascetic ideal, encompassing systems like Schopenhauerianism, Buddhism, and Christianity. These ideologies renounce earthly pleasures in favor of self-denial, perpetuating a will to nothingness that opposes life. Active nihilism, on the other hand, arises from the destruction of all established values and meanings. It signifies strength as individuals confront the abyss and create new values. Nietzsche referred to this figure as the Mensch, an independent creator who affirms life despite its inherent challenges. The Mensch gazes into the abyss without flinching, overcoming nihilism by embracing life-affirming principles such as the eternal recurrence and the will to power. The role of Stoicism in combating nihilism. While Nietzsche's philosophy offers profound insights, Stoicism provides practical strategies for navigating nihilism. Stoic teachings emphasize cultivating virtue, accepting fate, and focusing on what lies within our control. By prioritizing inner strength and resilience, Stoicism empowers individuals to transcend despair and disorientation. For instance, the Stoic practice of amor, that I loving one's fate, parallels Nietzsche's call to affirm life unconditionally. Both philosophies encourage embracing life's challenges as opportunities for growth. Additionally, Stoicism's emphasis on self-discipline aligns with Nietzsche's concept of the will to power, fostering personal mastery and self-realization. Conclusion: embracing true freedom through meaningful living. In summary, Nietzsche's exploration of nihilism reveals the dangers of despair, disorientation, and mediocrity. From Schopenhauer's bleak worldview to Christianity's loss of divine purpose, and finally to the complacency of the lost man, nihilism manifests in myriad ways. Yet, Nietzsche offers hope through the Mensch, a symbol of life affirmation and creative power. By integrating Stoic principles, we can combat nihilism and forge a path toward true freedom. As viewers of True Freedom, I invite you to reflect on these ideas and share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you navigate meaninglessness in your own life? Subscribe to our channel to join the discussion and explore further insights into philosophy and personal growth. And together, let's build a community dedicated to living authentically and embracing the fullness of existence. To deepen our understanding, let's delve further into some critical themes Nietzsche explored. The abyss as a dwelling place. In one of his letters, Austrian poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Not until we can make the abyss our dwelling place will the paradise we have sent ahead of us turn around." This metaphor encapsulates Nietzsche's vision of embracing life's uncertainties and hardships. Only by confronting the abyss, the void of meaninglessness, can we reclaim the richness of existence. The danger of conformists. Nietzsche warned against the allure of conformists, embodied by the last man. In today's hyper-connected world, the pressure to conform has intensified. Social media, consumer culture, and societal expectations often pull individuals toward mediocrity. Breaking free from this requires courage and a commitment to self-discovery. The eternal recurrence and personal responsibility. Nietzsche's concept of the eternal recurrence challenges us to live as if every moment will repeat infinitely. This thought experiment compels us to take responsibility for our choices, ensuring that each action aligns with our highest values. It's a call to live authentically and intentionally, rejecting the passivity that fuels nihilism. The will to power is self-mastery. Central to Nietzsche's philosophy is the will for power, which he described as the drive to overcome resistance and achieve self-mastery. This lifelong journey involves continuous growth, self-discipline, and the pursuit of excellence. By cultivating the will to power, we transform ourselves into creators of meaning, transcending the limitations imposed by nihilism. As we conclude this exploration, remember that the battle against nihilism is both personal and collective. Each of us has the power to shape our destiny, to create meaning in a seemingly indifferent universe. By embracing Stoic virtues and Nietzschean ideals, we can navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience. I encourage you to reflect on the ideas presented here. What's it take to overcome nihilism in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to True Freedom for more discussions on philosophy, personal growth, and the pursuit of meaning. Together, let's inspire a movement toward authenticity, creativity, and true freedom. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay courageous, and remain faithful to the earth.
All right, so welcome to our deep dive, and today we're tackling, wow, some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, you can see that.
Nihilism. We're going deep into the source material for this one is actually a video transcript.
How interesting.
It's called Nihilism and the Path to True Freedom with a pipe Stoicism from the True Freedom channel. So pretty intense title, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But honestly, I think we can all relate to that feeling of, is there even any meaning to any of this?
I think most people at some point have probably felt that way. It's a pretty common human experience, especially in the modern world.
Yeah. Well, Nietzsche, who we're going to be talking a lot about today, he actually saw this creeping nihilism as a huge problem.
Yeah, he did.
He even compared it to like a river, like rushing towards this catastrophic end. Like he was not messing around.
No, he was not.
Yeah.
He was very concerned about it. He saw it as a kind of symptom of a deeper sickness in Western culture.
So where do we even begin to like untangle this whole nihilism thing? I feel like it's one of those big, vague philosophical terms that gets thrown around, but no one ever really like defines.
Well, at its core, nihilism is basically the belief that life is inherently meaningless. Like there's no objective purpose or value to anything. But it's not just about being pessimistic or gloomy. It's more about that underlying sense that nothing really matters in the grand scheme of things.
So it's not just like, oh, I'm having a bad day. It's more like a fundamental lack of belief in anything.
Right. It can manifest in different ways, and that's what makes it so insidious, I guess.
Okay, so it's like a chameleon. It can kind of blend in and take different shapes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually something that our source material dives into. They break nihilism down into three main forms.
Three.
Yeah. You've got despair,
Okay.
disorientation,
Right.
and then a lack of higher values.
Okay, so let's unpack those, starting with despair. What does that look like?
Well, think about philosophers like Schopenhauer, some aspects of Buddhist teachings. They see suffering as like the dominant force in life. Sure, there might be moments of joy, but it's all ultimately kind of pointless or at least flawed.
Right. Like there's this underlying sense that everything is impermanent, that it's all going to fade away eventually.
Exactly. And that can lead to a pretty bleak outlook on life, a kind of resignation to suffering.
Right. So what about disorientation? Is that where Nietzsche's famous "God is dead" quote comes in?
That's exactly it. As science and reason started to gain traction, a lot of traditional religious frameworks began to crumble.
Right. People started questioning those old beliefs.
Yeah, and for many, that led to a sense of being lost, of not knowing where to turn for meaning or guidance, like their old compass just stopped working.
Okay. And then the last one, lack of higher values. What's that all about?
Well, that's where Nietzsche's idea of the last man comes in. It's not a literal person, more like a symbol, right, of those who've given up on striving for anything great. They've settled for a comfortable, mediocre existence. Think of, those who were completely absorbed in just, like, consuming and following trends, chasing pleasure, but never finding any real fulfillment.
Oh, so you mean like people who just kind of go through the motions, never really questioning anything or trying to reach for something bigger?
Exactly. They're content with a life of ease and distraction, but ultimately it's a pretty shallow existence.
Okay. I mean, it's a little unnerving, but I think we can all see a little bit of the last man in ourselves sometimes.
Oh, for sure. I think it's a real danger in today's world. It's so easy to get caught up in the noise and the distractions.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us to buy this or watch that or be like this person. It's overwhelming.
It is. But here's the thing. Nietzsche believed that we have a choice in how we respond to this feeling of meaninglessness. We can either be passive about it or active.
Okay, so what's the difference between passive and active nihilism?
Well, passive nihilism is basically resigning yourself to the idea that nothing matters. Like you're just accepting that you're drifting along in this current, going wherever it takes you.
And active nihilism is more about like fighting back against that current.
Exactly. It's about confronting the void head on and saying, okay, maybe there's no inherent meaning, but I can create my own.
So it's like choosing to be the captain of your own ship, even if you're sailing through uncharted waters.
Precisely. And that's where one of Nietzsche's most important ideas comes in. The Übermensch.
All right, break that down for me. When I hear Übermensch, I picture like a superhero, like Nietzsche's version of Superman.
I get that. But it's not about superpowers or physical strength. Übermensch translates to overman, and it's more about overcoming the despair of nihilism by forging your own values. The Übermensch creates meaning in a world that seems to lack it.
So it's more about inner strength and resilience than like capes and tights.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. But all this talk about Übermensch and confronting the void can feel kind of abstract and honestly kind of intimidating.
I hear you. And that's where Stoicism can be really helpful.
Stoicism. So we're jumping from Nietzsche to the Stoics now.
Yeah, because while Nietzsche's ideas are super thought-provoking, they can be a little hard to put into practice.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So how can Stoicism help us deal with this whole nihilism thing?
Well, Stoicism is all about action. It offers us these practical ways to deal with the very real anxieties that nihilism can stir up. Like, think about the Stoic principle of accepting what you can't control.
Okay, yeah, I've heard about that. But honestly, it sometimes feels like giving up. Like, if I just accept everything, isn't that kind of passive?
Well, the Stoics even have a phrase for it. Amor fati, which means love of fate.
Love of fate. I'm not sure I'm ready to love everything that happens to me.
Well, it's not about loving every single thing, good or bad. It's more about recognizing that we can't control everything that happens to us. But what we can control are our reactions to those events.
Okay, so it's more about like choosing how you respond to things rather than trying to control the uncontrollable.
Exactly. And this actually aligns with Nietzsche's idea of the will to power.
Wait, wasn't the will to power about like dominating others and like being super powerful?
See, that's where people often get it wrong. The will to power, in its truest sense, is about self-mastery. It's about pushing yourself to become the best version of yourself, not about controlling other people.
So it's about inner strength, not outer power.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And I can see how that ties into the whole Stoic idea of accepting what you can't control. If you're focused on mastering yourself, you're not going to waste energy on things you can't change.
Exactly. And that can be a really powerful antidote to the feelings of emptiness and meaninglessness that nihilism can bring. Because when you have something you're striving for, something you're passionate about, it's a lot harder to feel like nothing matters.
That's a great point. So it sounds like Stoicism and Nietzsche, even though they might seem like totally different philosophies, they actually kind of work together in this really cool way.
They do. And our source material highlights a few more fascinating points about this.
Okay, let's hear it. What else did you find?
So, you know how we were talking about the last man?
Yeah, the one who just kind of settles for a comfortable but ultimately meaningless existence.
Right. The source actually talks about how like that mindset can be super pervasive, especially, in today's world.
Oh, yeah, I totally see that. It's like everywhere you look, there's this pressure to conform, to like buy the latest gadget, follow the crowd, all that. It's kind of suffocating sometimes.
Yeah. And that's where Nietzsche's idea of the eternal recurrence comes in. Yeah. Remind me, have we talked about this before?
I think you might have mentioned it, but I definitely need a refresher.
Okay, so basically it's this thought experiment where you imagine having to live your life over and over again.
Like Groundhog Day, but forever.
Kind of. But the key is you're living the exact same life, every choice, every triumph, every failure, all of it, repeated endlessly.
Okay, that sounds kind of terrifying, actually. Like, what if I make the wrong choices? I'm stuck with them for, like, eternity.
I know, it's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
But Nietzsche wasn't saying that this is actually going to happen. It's more of a tool to kind of shake us out of our complacency.
Okay, so how does it do that?
Well, it forces you to ask yourself, if I had to live my life over and over again, would I change anything?
Oh, I see. So if the idea of reliving your life exactly as it is fills you with dread, that's a sign you need to maybe reevaluate some things.
Exactly. It's like this ultimate test of whether you're truly living in accordance with, your deepest values and desires.
And if you find yourself wishing you could change things, well, the eternal recurrence kind of pushes you to actually make those changes.
Yes, to start living more intentionally, to make choices that you wouldn't regret even if you had to repeat them forever.
Okay, I get it. It's a pretty intense thought experiment, but I can see how it could be really motivating.
It is. It really pushes you to take ownership of your life.
Yeah.
And, this idea of living intentionally really connects back to that whole will to power thing we were talking about before.
Right. We were saying how it's not about dominating others, but about mastering yourself.
Exactly. The will to power is all about, like, pushing yourself to grow, to overcome obstacles, to become the best version of yourself that you can be.
So it's like tacking into that inner strength and realizing you have the power to shape your own destiny.
Yes, it's about not letting life just happen to you, but actively creating the life you want.
Which, let's be real, is a lot easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. But it's a journey worth taking.
It is. So we've got this idea of the will to power, which is about self-mastery and pushing yourself to grow. And then we've got the Stoics with their emphasis on accepting what you can't control. I'm starting to see how those two ideas can work together.
Right. They complement each other. Remember, amor fati, that Stoic idea of loving your fate.
Yeah, it's still a bit of a mind bender for me.
Well, think of it this way. Amor fati isn't about passively accepting every bad thing that happens. It's more about recognizing that even in those difficult experiences, even in the tough stuff, there can be opportunities for growth.
Okay, so it's not about pretending that everything is perfect or that bad things don't hurt. It's about finding a way to learn from those experiences and use them to grow.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner strength to not only endure, but to actually thrive, even when things are tough.
I see. It's about like turning those lemons into lemonade.
Yeah.
Or, maybe some really potent philosophical fuel.
Exactly. And that ability to find that strength, that resilience, it's a huge part of what both Stoicism and Nietzsche are all about.
It is. Okay, but what about when things are really bad? Like real tragedy? How can you love your fate when, something truly awful happens?
That's a really important question. And honestly, I don't think amor fati means that you have to, force yourself to feel love in those moments.
Yeah.
It's more about acknowledging the pain, the grief, the difficulty, but also recognizing that even in those dark places, there can still be growth. There can still be learning.
So it's not about denying the pain, but about finding a way to move through it, to find meaning on the other side.
Yes, I think that's a really beautiful way to put it. And that kind of resilience, that ability to keep going even when it feels impossible, it's incredibly powerful.
It is, and it makes me think about how much of our lives we spend worrying about things that are completely outside of our control, what other people think of us, what might happen in the future, all of it.
You're right. We get so caught up in this whirlwind of anxiety and what ifs. But Stoicism reminds us that ultimately the only thing we can truly control is ourselves. Our thoughts, our actions, our responses to the world around us.
So it's about letting go of that need to control everything and finding a sense of peace in what we can actually influence.
Exactly. And that shift in focus from what we can't control to what we can, it can be incredibly liberating.
It's like taking back the reins of your own life.
Yes. And that's what both Stoicism and Nietzsche are all about, really. They both emphasize that idea of self-mastery, of taking ownership of your life and creating your own meaning.
So it's not about denying the reality of suffering or pretending that everything is always sunshine and rainbows. It's about acknowledging the challenges and finding a way to thrive despite them.
Exactly. It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience, the good and the bad, and finding a way to make it all meaningful.
I love that. So we've talked about the will to power. We've talked about amor fati. We've talked about the eternal recurrence. Are there any other big ideas from Nietzsche or the Stoics that we should touch on?
Well, the source material also talks a lot about the dangers of conformism.
Conformism.
Yeah, that pressure to fit in, to be like everyone else. Nietzsche saw that as a huge threat to individual freedom and self-realization.
Oh, totally. It's like the more you try to fit in, the more you risk losing yourself.
Exactly. And he believed that true freedom comes from embracing your uniqueness, from daring to be different.
So it's about having the courage to stand out, to be your true, authentic self.
Exactly. And the Stoics actually offer some helpful tools for navigating that. Like, remember their emphasis on focusing on what you can control.
Right.
One of the things we can control is how much we let those external pressures dictate our choices.
Oh, I see. So it's about finding that inner compass and trusting it to guide you, even when the world is telling you to go in a different direction. Okay, wow. This conversation has been so insightful. I feel like I'm looking at the world through a whole new lens now.
I'm glad to hear that.
But, it also feels like we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore here.
Oh, definitely. There always is. And I think our source material has a few more nuggets of wisdom to offer as we wrap up this deep dive.
Okay, I'm all ears. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground: will to power, amor fati, eternal recurrence, all that. But there's this one image from our source material that keeps coming back to me.
Which one?
The abyss.
Oh, right.
Like, what's the deal with that? What does it even represent?
Well, it's a powerful metaphor for that feeling of emptiness that nihilism can bring up, like staring into the void. It can be pretty terrifying.
Yeah, totally. Like the ground is just pulled out from under you. You're just free falling into this vast unknown.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The source actually suggests that confronting that abyss, embracing that uncertainty, can be a really important step in actually finding meaning.
Okay, so it's like you have to go through the darkness to get to the light.
Yeah, kind of. Like, remember that Rilke quote? Something about not until we make the abyss our dwelling place?
Will the paradise we have sent ahead of us turn around?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
It's like we have to be willing to face that emptiness, that void, to truly appreciate, everything else.
I like that. I mean, it's still scary, but I get it.
Yeah, for sure. But remember, we were talking about the Stoics and how they emphasize accepting what you can't control. Well, this is a prime example. We can't control the fact that life is full of challenges, that there's going to be suffering, that, we're all going to die eventually.
Right.
Like, trying to fight against that reality is just going to create more suffering.
Okay, so if we can't control those big, scary existential things, what can we control?
Ourselves. Our responses to those things. We can choose to face them with courage, with resilience, even, with humor, like choosing to dance in the rain instead of cursing the storm.
I love that. So instead of trying to control the storm, you learn to dance in it.
Yeah, exactly. You find a way to make peace with it, to even find joy in it.
Okay, this whole conversation has been such a mind shift for me. It's like you've given me a whole new set of tools for dealing with life. But I do have one lingering question.
What's that?
If this whole finding meaning thing is a journey, a process, how do you keep from getting discouraged? Like, what if you lose sight of the path,
That's a great question. And I think it's something we all struggle with. The key is to remember that the search for meaning isn't about, reaching some perfect endpoint. It's about the journey itself. It's about constantly learning and growing.
So it's okay to stumble, to make mistakes, even to question everything you thought you knew.
Totally. That's all part of it. And, you don't have to do it alone. There are so many resources out there. The Stoics, Nietzsche, other philosophers, even, just talking to people who are also grappling with these big questions.
That's really helpful. It's like knowing that you're part of something bigger, that we're all in this together, trying to figure it all out.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so exciting. There's always more to discover, more to learn, more to explore.
There is. Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive for today, but it definitely feels like just the beginning of a much larger conversation.
I agree.
So listeners, remember all the tools we've explored, the Stoic practices, Nietzsche's ideas, the power of self-reflection, all of it. And never stop seeking, never stop questioning.
Yes. Stay curious, stay courageous, and keep diving deep.
And remember, true freedom is out there. It's waiting for you to discover it.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
We'll see you next time.